Ethan always had an incredible gift: painting. He was deeply passionate about it, while I usually found myself on the outskirts of his creative world. He had often tried to encourage me to paint, but art had never become a passion of mine. He would spend hours painting, but it never interfered with our marriage. For years, we had a happy and untroubled relationship, but everything changed a week ago. That morning started like any other. We left home for work, our goodbye routine uneventful. But when I returned home that evening, I found Ethan in his studio, an unusual occurrence since he normally didn't come home before 6. The studio door was slightly ajar. Inside, he was engrossed in sketching something. His shoulders were tense, his pencil moving rapidly across the canvas. "Ethan? Is something wrong?" I asked, but he didn't respond. When I touched his shoulder, he flinched, dropped his pencil on the desk, and left the room without looking at me. I was stunned. "Ethan, what's going on?" I called after him, but received no reply. My eyes were drawn to the canvas on the desk. Slowly, I stepped closer and looked. What I saw sent a chill through me. The painting depicted our street. A car and a truck seemed to have collided at the intersection. One man was standing outside the car, holding his head, while another stood in front of the truck, gesturing animatedly. But what caught my attention wasn't the accident. It was the shadowy figure in the background near a tree. It had no face or distinguishing features, just 2 white ovals where eyes should have been. It wasn't moving. It seemed to be watching. Ethan usually drew inspiration from nature, people, or animals, but this was completely different. I began searching the house, calling out his name. Each unanswered call heightened the growing dread in me. Eventually, I found him in our bedroom, still in his morning clothes, lying with his back to me. I wanted to say something, but hesitated. Perhaps he had a bad day, I thought. Quietly, I shut the door and went to the living room. I picked up a book and sat on the couch, losing track of time, until the silence was shattered by a loud crash and yelling outside. I rushed to the window. At the intersection, a car and a truck had stopped. 2 men were arguing loudly nearby. An unsettling feeling crept over me. I had seen this scene before. Then it hit me. Ethan's painting. The scene outside was an exact match to the one in his painting, except for one detail. The shadowy figure near the tree was absent in real life. That night, I lay in bed, keeping a noticeable distance from Ethan, who was still lying with his back to me. I felt ashamed of myself, but the unease surrounding Ethan was becoming impossible to ignore. The next morning, I realized his side of the bed was empty. I quickly got up and searched the house but couldn't find him anywhere. Gathering my courage, I entered his studio again. He was there, seated at the desk, working on a new painting. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I asked. Again, no response. His pencil moved swiftly across the canvas. He set it down and left the room without a word. Alone, I stood before the canvas, my hands trembling as I lifted the cover. The painting clearly depicted a scene. A woman stood at the kitchen counter, her head bowed, staring at her hands, which were smeared with what looked like blood. The floral-patterned cabinets immediately told me this was our kitchen. Then I looked at the woman's face and froze. The face was unmistakably mine. My heart raced. I had to get out of the house. Throwing on my work clothes, I fled. At a nearby cafe, I used my phone to frantically search for psychologists and psychiatrists, jotting down numbers. Ethan's vacant, lifeless expression kept replaying in my mind. I resolved to convince him to talk to a professional. On my way back home, I rehearsed how I would approach him calmly. When I arrived, I noticed something unexpected on the doorstep: a white envelope. I picked it up and brought it into the kitchen. Grabbing a pair of scissors, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper with a message written in large, bold letters. "The final painting is complete." Something inside me screamed to see the painting. I rushed to Ethan's studio. He wasn't there, nor was he anywhere else in the house. Standing in front of the closed door, I steadied my breath and opened it. The edge of the painting on the desk fluttered slightly in the breeze. I approached it cautiously. When I finally looked, I felt the blood drain from my body. The setting was our bedroom. On the floor was me, slumped against the bed frame. Beside me was Ethan holding a large knife. His smile was chilling, triumphant, and in the background, the shadowy figure was no longer distant. It was closer now, more detailed, and it was smiling too. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance. I grabbed onto the chair to steady myself. Ethan could be anywhere. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, hiding from my own husband. I needed to leave immediately. I rushed down the corridor to the kitchen. My car keys weren't in my pocket. They must have been left in the studio. Going back upstairs seemed risky. I opened a drawer and grabbed a small kitchen knife for protection. Heart pounding, I went upstairs, cautiously checking each room. 2 doors remained, the studio and the bedroom. "Please let them be in the studio," I whispered. The studio was empty. No keys. Reluctantly, I turned to the bedroom. There, on the windowsill, lay my keys. How had they gotten there? Time was running out. I needed to leave. As I reached for the keys, I heard a noise behind me. Turning, I saw Ethan. His eyes bore into me, freezing me in place. He took a step closer, but I managed to push past him. After a brief struggle, I knocked him down. I ran out of the room, assuming he wasn't seriously hurt, and fled the house. I immediately contacted the authorities. Ethan was taken to the hospital, and I underwent an evaluation. His condition was critical, and he fell into a coma. That is, until today. Moments ago, I received a call from the hospital. Ethan didn't make it. My tears were uncontrollable as I returned to my hotel room. There, on the doorstep, I found a package. Trembling, I opened it. Inside was another painting. And just like that, the terror began anew.